On Mother's Day, I started the message with the top 10 mom sayings, if you remember when I did that. So today I'm going to start with some top 10 dad sayings. And some of these may sound pretty familiar to you. Okay, number 10. I'm not going to tell you again. Number 9. It kind of goes along with it. Don't make me come back there. Number 8. I'll turn this car around. Number 7. No, we're not there yet. Number 6. This is one that I used to hear a lot when I was younger. Stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. Okay, number 5. We're starting to improve on these a little bit. Number 5. Don't talk back to your mother. Yeah, he's sticking up for mom. Number 4. This one was also a mom saying, so some of these cross over. But number 4, when I was your age. And so, of course, we always hear the stories from our parents about when I was your age, things were different than the way they are now. And now I catch myself doing the same thing. You know, think about how things were when I was younger as compared to how they are now. And in a lot of ways, this isn't just a dad saying. This is more, I think, of a grandpa saying, or grandfather saying. You know, like those old stories where when I was your age, I had to walk to school in the snow uphill both ways. And of course, as the kids, we always believed those stories and took them as gospel. And then now that we're older, we're thinking, wait a minute, how did he go uphill both ways? Okay, number 3 is a double one. It's, do you think I'm made of money? Or money doesn't grow on trees? And I think we've all heard or said a variation of that. Number 2, you're not going out in that outfit. And before I do the number 1 one, I actually had 11 of them that I couldn't choose between. So this one's an honorable mention. Didn't quite make the list, but this would have been number 11. That wasn't me. It was the dog. Does anybody know what I'm getting at there? Yeah. Okay. And then the number 1, top 10 dad saying, just like the number 1 mother saying, is, I love you. Now, some of these dad sayings you may have heard from your own fathers, some of them more than others, and some of them maybe not at all. And I hope that you heard the uplifting ones more often than the negative ones. But most of all, that whenever you heard any of them, you recognize that they were coming from a place of love. Now, some of you, I'm not going to name any names, but some of you have come from families where your father rarely shows affection. And I understand completely because my father is the same way in a lot of ways. And that's part of our culture. Personally, I try to be more expressive with my daughter. Now, I've heard most of these dad sayings from my own father over the years, even the one, you're not going out like that. Except in my case, it was more often about getting a haircut than it was about the clothes that I was wearing. If you've seen some of the pictures of me when I was younger, when I was real young, I had the short, straight-laced haircut, combed to the side like I do it now, cut real short in the back, real short in the front, and sometimes I'd go to school wearing a button-up shirt, and sometimes even with a tie and a pocket protector. So you can imagine that I was one of the bookworms that always got teased in high school for my appearance. But when I got a little bit older and started the band and started getting out on my own, I started to let my hair grow out a little bit. And in fact, on my wedding day, my hair was longer than my wife's hair was. And so Dad didn't care for that. So he was often telling me, get a haircut. Now, I caught myself using that dad saying, or a variation of it, when I first saw my daughter's prom dress that she had picked out. Now, it was beautiful, but it was a little bit revealing. So I said something to the effect of, you're going to wear something under that, right? And she basically replied, trust me, Dad. And I did. Because she had earned that trust. And she didn't let me down. When she did go to the prom, yes, she had something fitting underneath of it. And it looked gorgeous. It was beautiful. And I I almost felt bad for even questioning her on it, because I knew deep down that she was more responsible than to wear it in a way that was inappropriate. So it really bothers me when I feel like I've let her down. I want to be a good father, and I know that I fail far too often. And it's not for lack of love, but often simple circumstances. Her 16th birthday fell right after I had lost my job. I wanted it to be really special for her 16th birthday, and I wanted to give her a really extravagant gift. And I had been saving up for a while to get her something, and then when the time came, I couldn't get her the really nice gift that I wanted to get for her. Knowing her, I know she was happy with what she got. She's that kind of special, good-hearted, unselfish person. That's her personality through and through, which is exactly why I wanted the best for her, because she deserved it. Living in two different households, we also don't get to see each other as often as we'd like. And that makes me feel like I'm failing her too, as a father. How many of you, and you don't have to raise your hands, this is rhetorical, but just think to yourself, how many of you have had a rough relationship with your father? Maybe he wasn't always there. Maybe he was physically there, but he was emotionally distant. Maybe he didn't provide well for your family. Maybe he even had an addiction problem, and it caused a division between you. Sometimes when our fathers don't live up to our expectations, we look to others as father figures. And for many, those are TV fathers. So like I did on Mother's Day, I want to briefly take a look at some of the examples of good and bad TV fathers. Some of the internet's top TV fathers include Danny Tanner from Full House. Anybody remember Full House from the 90s? Philip Banks from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Andy Taylor from the Andy Griffith Show. That's one of my all-time favorites. And Charles Ingalls from Little House on the Prairie. Those are just a few of what the internet says are the top TV fathers in history. Danny Tanner, for example, was a single father raising 3 girls. He was funny and goofy, and he was fair with his discipline. Everything he did was full of love. Philip Banks, from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, was a surrogate father of sorts. He was not Will's biological father, but he loved Will as if he were. He was more of a father to him than his real father was. Andy Taylor, on the Andy Griffith Show, was another single father. He was a well-respected authority figure in the community, and he was always fair, but firm when he needed to be. He was the epitome of a good father, teaching his son right from wrong and raising him to the best of his ability. Charles Ingalls was a classic, rugged family man. He was a hard worker and provider, using his own 2 hands to build their home and to provide for their family. He taught his kids right from wrong and sacrificed dearly to provide for them. In fact, if you remember the story of the railroad where he had lost his job, they were getting ready to shut down the town or something, I can't remember exactly, but he and Mr. Edwards went out to work on the railroad. It was a very deadly and dangerous job that he went to in order to provide for his family. He was also firm but fair, always correcting them, his children, in love. For example, Albert, if you'll remember, was the boy that they ended up adopting later in the series. And when Albert developed a drug problem, Mr. Ingalls was rough on him, but in a loving and supporting way.
James. No. Don't you lie to me, Albert. Lie to you about what? About the morphine. Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. Talking about the morphine that you took from Dr. Baker. Now, don't lie to me. You took it, didn't you? Didn't you? Yes! I took it.
Growing up, I saw my own dad in Charles Ingalls, a simple man of the land, a hard worker, and a good provider. He didn't believe in loans or credit cards. Cash on the barrel is the phrase that they used in Little House on the Prairie, and my dad was the same way. If you couldn't afford it, you didn't really need it. And he was a man of his word. If he promised you something, he'd go out of his way to keep it. And he taught us to be content with what we had. Even when he was unemployed, we never felt like we were poor. I'll give you a quick story about that. He used to work for Pennington Bakery when it was in Marietta. And when it closed down, he, of course, was unemployed for a while. And that Christmas, my brothers and I all wanted bicycles. And he lost his job, I think it was like in the fall. So it was like shortly before Christmas. And so they told us, your dad lost his job, so don't be expecting a lot for Christmas. And so we weren't expecting a big Christmas, but we were at that age to where we still believed in Santa Claus. I'll say that a little bit lower so the kids downstairs don't hear. But we were at that age where we still believed in Santa Claus. And so when Christmas came, on Christmas Eve, we went to our grandparents' house, and when we came back, there were 3 brand new bicycles underneath the Christmas tree. And we were like, that's when I was old enough where I was just starting to doubt. And I said, now I know there's a Santa Claus because I know Dad could afford to get us those bicycles. So that's just an example of the love that he and Mom had for us and the sacrifices that they made so that we would never feel poor, that we would always feel loved, and that we had a good home, and that we were always provided for. It's a testament to his role as a selfless provider, sacrificing for his family. Even though Mom and Dad had their ups and downs through the years, they set an example for us boys by sticking together through thick and thin. For them, divorce was never an option. Of course, they'd argue sometimes, and they'd throw that word around as a threat, but they would never follow through on it. And that was a value that we learned from them growing up. And so that was another reason why I felt so badly when I went through mine, is because I had always said, when it's for me, it's one woman for the rest of my life, and that's it. And so I felt disappointed in myself when I was unable to follow through with that. And while he's never been the type to share his religious and political views out loud, he's undoubtedly a man of faith and convictions, who shows it not only in his words, but by his character. While my mother has always been the nurturer in our family and Dad was always the disciplinarian, I'll be proud if I can be a fraction of the good father that my father was for me and that I've come to realize that he is. Now, when it comes to bad fathers, I have to come back to Game of Thrones as an example of a bad TV father. And here we have perhaps the worst TV father of all time, Tywin Lannister. Now, Tywin Lannister had 3 children, all of which developed questionable morals. And that's the understatement of the week. One of his children was Cersei Lannister, the wicked queen that I mentioned on Mother's Day, who corrupted her young son, leading to his downfall as well as her own eventually. The second child was her brother, the Kingslayer, which is what they called him, who betrayed the king and had an affair with his own sister. And the third child was a deformed drunkard who loved loose women, but ended up the member of the family who actually had the most admirable character among the entire family. So Tywin the father blamed that third son for the death of his own mother, who died in childbirth.
What do you want, Tyrion?
Why does everyone assume I want something? Can't I simply visit with my beloved father?
Tell me what you want.
I am your son and lawful heir.
You want Casterly Rock.
It is mine, by right.
I would let myself be consumed by maggots before mocking the family name and making you heir to Casterly Rock.
Why?
Why? You ask that? You who killed your mother to come into the world? You are an ill-made, spiteful little creature, full of envy, lust, and low cunning. Men's laws give you the right to bear my name and display my colors, since I cannot prove that you are not mine. And teach me humility, the gods have condemned me to watch you waddle about, wearing that proud lion that was my father's sigil and his father's before him. But neither gods nor men will ever compel me to let you turn Casterly Rock into your whorehouse. Go now. Speak no more of your rights to Casterly Rock. Go.
He treated the boy like dirt his whole life, sentenced him to death for a crime that he didn't commit, and even stole his wife. Now, those of us who have had rough relationships with our fathers, with this in perspective, maybe we didn't quite have it so bad. And if you can't say that your father wasn't as bad as that, you got me beat, and you have my deepest sympathy. So what should we expect from a good father? Number one, a good father should be a man of faith and teach his children to follow God. Proverbs 22:6 says, "Train up a child in the way he should go. When he is old, he will not turn from it." It's not the government's job, it's not the school's job, and it's not the village's job. It's our own job as parents. Yes, we want our community to reinforce those values in our children, but it has to start in the home. Number two, a good father should lead by example. You've heard the phrase, "You may be the only Bible that they ever read." Or maybe the phrase that goes along with it says, "Actions speak louder than words." Or as St. Francis of Assisi said, "Preach the gospel, use words if necessary." 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 1 through 3 talks about letters of recommendation. Paul tells the Corinthians, "You yourselves are our letter of recommendation, known and read by everyone." So a good father should be a good example for his children, teaching them by his actions and not just by his words. None of that, do as I say, not as I do. As much as we want our kids to learn from our mistakes, we need to be setting examples for them of what to do and not of what not to do. Unfortunately, so many times, myself included, we have to give that example. It's like, okay, I made that mistake when I was younger, and I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I did. Number three, a good father disciplines his children when they need it, but never in anger. Always in love, with the goal of correcting them rather than punishing them. Our children shouldn't view us as prison wardens or as the captain of a firing squad, but as loving parents who want what's best for them. As it says in Proverbs 13:24, "Whoever spares the rod hates their children, but the one who loves their children is careful to discipline them." Number four, a good father doesn't provoke his children. This kind of goes along with number three, to discipline them with love. Ephesians 6:4 says, "Fathers, do not exasperate your children, instead bringing them up in the training and instruction of the Lord." So basically, just be fair, be kind, treat them right, and teach them right. Simply trying to be a good father actually goes a long way. Number five, a good father provides for his family. Scripture is pretty harsh on fathers who fail in this area. 1 Timothy 5:8 says that anyone who doesn't provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. This echoes the sentiment that Jesus expressed in Matthew 6:9 through 11, when he acknowledged that even the wicked love and care for their children. So if we didn't do the good that even the wicked do, then what good are we? Now, of course, there are extenuating circumstances. Sometimes you just simply don't have the resources to give. For example, like my father when he was unemployed, or me when I lost my job. But you do what you can. You sacrifice for them because good parents love their children to the point to where they put their needs before their own. So fathers, provide for your family. Don't provoke your children, but rather teach them, train them, and discipline them with love. Lead them by your example, and let them see your faith. Now, while Solomon's mother gave him motherly advice in Proverbs 31, his father King David prayed for him in 1 Chronicles 29. My son Solomon is young and inexperienced, he prayed. Give my son Solomon the wholehearted devotion to keep your commands, statutes, and decrees. So David had taught his son all that he could, and now he was praying for God to help lead him. Next, whatever you do, don't give up on your children. Like the father in the parable of the prodigal son, he had to let his child go free, but he never gave up on him. He continued to pray for his son and to worry about him. And when the son finally came to his senses, the father welcomed him home with open arms. Also like Charles Ingalls did with Albert on Little House on the Prairie.
I'm really scared because I think if there was morphine here and I was alone, I'd take it. I know that. But you're not alone. You got me. What happens when you go back? When you leave me? I'm not gonna leave you. You're my son, I'm not gonna leave you.
I've got one last quick story to tell before I wrap this up. As I said earlier, my father was never one for expressing his affection outwardly. We men rarely said, I love you, to each other, and we still don't. When we do, it just feels awkward. But he shows me that he loves me in his own way. Now that changed in November of 2017 when I collapsed on my front steps from dehydration and kidney failure. At the time, the symptoms looked like I was having a stroke. I was passed out, so I don't remember it. But Mom told me that Dad was holding me in his arms like a baby while they waited for the emergency squad. And it shocked her to see him so outwardly affectionate. And it also revealed how serious the situation was. Listen, guys, I know it's our culture. It's the way we were raised. Men don't cry. They don't show weakness or outward affection. I get it. But let's not wait until something drastic happens before we let our kids know that we love them. I know that my dad loves me. But do your kids know that you love them? Don't take that chance. Those three little words, those simple three little words, may mean the world to them to hear from you. If you can't remember the last time you told your child, I love you, then I challenge you, no, I dare you, to tell them today. You won't regret it. Let us pray.
We hope you enjoyed today's message. If you did, be sure to hit the like button. And if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, be sure to also subscribe so that you'll know when we post new videos. If you'd like to join us in person, we're at the Highland Ridge Community Church at 2200 Highland Ridge Road in Lowell, Ohio. Our church services are Sunday mornings at 9 o'clock a.m. We'd love to see you here. So everybody have a great week, and God bless.